This episode is brought to you by HighSpots.com. HighSpots.com is the leading provider of professional wrestling and mixed martial arts merchandise. From wrestling boots to wrestling DVDs, wrestling action figures to title belts, HighSpots.com has the largest selection of wrestling merchandise. Go there right now with our link, tinyurl.com/STS HighSpots. STSHIGHSPOTS. Shop there with that link. It won't cost you any extra, but it will help support this podcast.
Have you listened to episode 69? Lance and I count down the top 10 hot chicks of 2017. It's not as bad as you think. Here's a clip. Listen to it. Download it.
She's a Shimmer regular, like you said. She's always great in the ring. She's always been super nice to me when I've seen her at the shows, so she's very cool. She did a great job in the Mae Young Classic, now that you reminded me of that, because she was in, I want to say 2, maybe 3 matches total. But if I recall correctly, when we talked about that, when we did that list, she was like my highest ranking person because her matches, all of her matches there were outstanding. So great worker, really cool chick, and she dates Eddie Kingston. So I think that gives hope to the schlubs out there that watch professional wrestling, that they have a chance with a girl like Mia Yim. So Mia Yim at number 10.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I remember the first Twitter picture I seen, and she's like in the bed with Eddie, and I'm like, what the fuck? No, go ahead.
So at number 9 is my first wild card, and I have Ember Moon.
Oh, yes. I and I can't believe I looked over her. I just didn't put her down. Here's something really funny. I have not talked to her but maybe 2 or 3 times, but when she first got in the business, she was working in Jonesboro, Arkansas, for a little small promotion, and Rodney Mack, that was in WWE for a while, was helping train her. And they would all come before the matches and work out. Just a super girl, nice, sweet. Backstage she was nice to everybody.
Wink, wink. No, I'm kidding.
No.
Hey, welcome everyone, live from STS Studios. This is episode 87. Welcome everyone. Hey, we want to get some housekeeping, if you will, here in the front. I would like to thank Bob McGee at Pro Wrestling Between the Sheets, www.pwbts.com, Gene Jackson at localstolegends.com, and Sean Garmer at w2mnet.com. That's right. Also, guys, if you're an Eagles fan and they won the Super Bowl this Sunday, why not buy something Eagles, some Eagles wear, and support us here at STS? You can go to tinyurl.com/STS NFL shop. That's tinyurl.com/STS NFL shop. You hit that link, and it doesn't cost you any extra, and we just get a kickback from it. Real quick, I'm at Comic Book Mark BT, or at BT Shooting the Shiznit. They're on Instagram. Cool Kids MMA and Facebook group. It's a wrestling and MMA talk Facebook group. You can just search that on Facebook. If we like you, we'll let you in. If we don't, we'll kick you out. There is also a Shooting the Shiznit Facebook page that I post all the episodes. All the episodes and archives are there at stspod.club. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Player FM, Pod Paradise, Spreaker. Also, a quick shout-out to our buddy Suplex City Limits, Creative Control, Who's Right Podcast, and P3 Radio. My buddy Max, who does the commercials, and also my buddy Nate over there at Wide Men Can't Jump. Okay, guys, let's get to the show.
His name is Paul LaPorte. Paul, welcome to Shooting the Shiznit.
Thank you very much for having me on, Brian. Appreciate the time.
Oh, I'm excited about having you on. It's as I said, my guest flaked out on me. I want all my listeners to understand that it's not always easy getting a guest. Paul actually followed me today, and I went to see who the hell this is and what this is about, and was real excited about it. And we'll get to that. And we talked right before we went on the line. So you got some interests that some of my listeners will also have when we get to what you're doing now. So first. How long you been a fan? How long you been a professional wrestling fan?
So when I say literally all my life, I think that's probably as close as I can possibly get. I was born March 29th, 1985, which is 2 days before the first WrestleMania ever took place. And I literally cannot remember a time when I wasn't watching pro wrestling. My father watched it. And then just when I was a child, kind of growing up through it. I, of course, started off like everybody else does, cheering Hulk Hogan and all the baby faces and hating all the heels. And then, right around probably the 1996 period when the Monday Night Wars were really starting to heat up, that's when, I'm starting to go into the teenage years, and my idea of being a wrestling fan really kind of switches over once I start seeing guys like Dean Malenko and Rey Mysterio and the cruiserweights in WCW, and it goes from, the bad guys and the good guys to just really seeing good and exciting wrestling, and from there it just kind of exploded out. I've taken interest in wrestling of all kinds from all over the world. I've actually been lucky enough to be involved in some wrestling organizations. I was involved in a company called IWS up in Montreal, Canada in the mid-2000s when guys like Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn were there. Awesome. I was doing things like ring crew and security. I had a friend of mine who was a referee. I lived about 4 hours away at the time, so we would drive up and go to those shows there and help out, and that was a lot of fun. And then from there, I just kind of parlayed that into a lot of different things. I've done commentary for some smaller promotions. I'm from New York, so kind of in that Northeast area, and actually currently I am involved in the a independent promotion called Truly Independent Wrestling, which is based out of Lanesboro, Massachusetts. I'm on the writing team and the booking team for them, and then I've until recently done color commentary for them as well, and I'm their on-air in-character general manager for the show too. So I really took a love of just pro wrestling as an art form and as sport, and just really wanted to get involved in it as I got on later in life. So that's the long form answer to your question, but really I have been a wrestling fan for as long as I can possibly remember.
I'm about 18 years older than you, so I graduated in May of 1985 from high school. So but it all starts. I started at 10 or 12 years old, being a wrestling fan, and your involvement in backstage and everything seems to be something that happens to all of us that really have the huge love for it and want to find out more information. I talk about being, when did I know it was a work, and when did I know they were it wasn't on the up and up, and I always felt like I knew but didn't know how. That it was. So then when I found out how, I wanted to learn more, and then ended up hanging out with wrestlers and being a manager and doing this and doing that, and doing a kayfabe site for about 5 years. So we all have our little history and there's guys like Paul Heyman, Jim Cornette, who were just huge fans, and then went into the business to be part of. And it seems like those guys that were always huge fans, and not always, but most of the time, are the good writers. They're the good performers, and those are the guys it seems like all of a sudden those are the guys I like. I remember being told last year sometime, and I don't know if I haven't told the story on Shooting the Shiznit, but I was told ACW, I don't know if you know that wrestler, and I know a lot of people will know who I'm talking about, didn't even know who Bobby Eaton was. So I'm not a fan of ACW anymore. So.
No respect for the old guard, huh?
Yeah, yep. And I personally know Bobby Eaton, so that stabbed me in the back too, just when I know him.
I'm sure, yeah.
Okay, so you have invented a card game, and I want to tell you, here's my history on this. And when I was looking at this, I was just so excited. I played a game, and I cannot remember what the name of it was. And there'll be somebody out there, and you might be able to tell me, but it was a piece of paper, regular sheet size of paper, and it was the wrestler's name at the top, and there was like 3 or 4 different sections. I rolled a dice, and me and one of my friends was really into it, and the move would happen. You put 2 guys against each other, and the move would happen, and it came with like 20 wrestlers. I had this real cool high school teacher. I actually whited out one of the wrestlers and made a template, and he photocopied on these real old photocopiers that were purple and had a real strong smell. Some people will remember those. But I had like close to 200 wrestlers, and had them all booked, everything, had it all in a notebook. I actually found it when I moved to St. Louis about 2 years ago, and just tons of stuff. But that's why I got excited when I seen your card game there.
Yeah, and I'm not sure about that specific game, but there have been a number of different pro wrestling games that kind of really throughout the past 3-4 decades or so. And I've played a good number of them. As a matter of fact, my friend that I met who runs the promotion that I work for currently and was the referee in IWS when we would go up there, we met playing a WWE card game called Raw Deal back in the mid-2000s. It was a licensed game through WWE, and we got very heavily involved in that. And there have been other ones throughout time, but the majority of the pro wrestling card games and board games specifically that I've played all kind of have the same theme. And the idea is that you're a wrestler trying to win a wrestling match. You're a wrestler, your opponent's, the other wrestler, and you're trying to beat the other wrestler. And I've played that, and it's been done. And with this game that I've designed it's called Book It, the wrestling promoter card game, the idea is that the concept of a wrestling match is in kayfabe combative, but in terms of actual reality is a cooperative thing. You have to work together. So having 2 people be opponents in a wrestling match wasn't as kind of exciting to me because your mindset's on the inside for so long. You don't really think in terms of that anymore. So where does the real competition exist? It exists between the promoters and promotions. So I thought, well, what about instead of being a wrestler trying to win a wrestling match, you're a wrestling promoter trying to have the best wrestling promotion? So that was kind of the genesis of it. In June of 2016, I kind of made the base for this game, just things written down on scraps of paper put into sleeves that had cards backing them, and it was just kind of done. Like I did it in like 2 days and just kind of showed it off to my friends. They're like, this is actually really good. You should go with this. And I just kind of continued to develop it and refine the game and add things in and take things out. And then it got to the point where I decided, okay, I'm going to actually make this into a thing. And I found an artist, a really great artist by the name of Alex Mahoney, who has actually done a lot of merchandise design for guys like the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega and Adam Cole. And just...
Well, that's, I'm going to interrupt you right here. That's
Sure.
awesome that you actually got... I seen some of the cards, which I thought were awesome, but that you actually got a person that does wrestling. So, hey, that's awesome to be able to get them. You always find when you're trying to do something outside of the norm, especially in a professional wrestling, people just don't get it and don't always give your vision. My person, the 2 people that do my artwork for my shirts and stuff are my 2 daughters, 2 oldest daughters. I got 3, and they grew up with professional wrestling and get it. So that's good to have someone there doing the cards that actually get it.
Yeah, and that was important to me too. I actually, when I went looking through an artist, I just kind of started just combing through Facebook and like looking through different wrestling groups and seeing like who did what. And then I found Alex, and Alex is just... she's like this unicorn because she's like this 21-year-old girl from Australia who like has incredible knowledge of like the mid-90s like FMW deathmatch scene in Japan. Like she's just like an insane wrestling savant, and all of these wrestlers that I threw at her, because they're all based off of or inspired by people in real life, she's like, oh, I know that person. Oh, that person's cool. Like, and these are people that nobody else of my friends even that I've shown them to knew. So I just knew right away that combined with her kind of more lighthearted style, I didn't want this to be, you know, like this edgy, gritty game or whatever. I wanted to have kind of a sense of humor to it. Those two things combined, it was just perfect. And she did an amazing job, did like 100 different pieces of art for this game. And I'm really, really happy with how it's come out. There's been a lot of really positive feedback on it, and that's what's really kind of inspired us to go forward and, you know, launch the Kickstarter and go to WrestleCon with it for that initial weekend. So that's what we're gearing up towards right now.
Awesome, yeah. I'll let you put all that stuff over before we get off here.
Sure.
But with all the characters, I remember one time connecting with some guy where we were like pen pals, but it was more email. I guess I was emailing at the time, and I was booking stuff on. This is really some of my close wrestling fans are going to know how nerdy I really was. But I was booking a promotion with New Japan. It was a Japanese version of New Japan on PlayStation 1.
Okay.
We came up with all these characters and I based them on some guys that I worked with, which was hilarious because I would come to work the next day. I worked in a factory, and I would say, you know, the Viper beat Dan Danger, and you know, the new champ. I'd come in and they'd say, well, who's the new champ? And I remember me and the guy Viper, who were just like brothers. He's like a younger brother to me, and me and him got into an argument about something really stupid. So me and him didn't talk. We worked side by side, but we didn't talk for like 4 days. Okay, and he was my champ at the time, but I changed champions because I was mad at him and made him lose a loser league town. The Viper lost the loser league town. So that's the kind of fun stuff. And I still have those notebooks. It's really weird. I wrote everything down and who won, who lost, kept records and everything. And most of the wrestlers were not. You know, real names, and then I had these special cards where you would bring in the real names for one big show, and you know, against the local guys. And you are skating around that. You're not going to use any of the real names, but I seen some of the characters. But go ahead, throw out. I want you to talk about how you play it not right this second, but. Tell us some of the characters that we have in the game.
So the game, the way it's set up is, again, like you're a wrestling promoter and you're trying to sign independent wrestlers to your promotion to put on a really good show. And what I've done is I've kind of split them up into 4 different styles. So there's strong style and sports entertainment and lucha libre and hardcore wrestling. And I've taken people who... you know, wrestlers in that who were inspired by people in each of those different genres. So some of my favorites in terms of names, probably specifically, we have Filipino Dave, who is a strong style wrestler. We have Jane Sienna, who is the top wrestler in sports entertainment. Hardcore wrestling has Mox Ambrosia. We have in Lucha Libre Rey Enigma. As one of the top guys in there. So I've taken people who, you know, obviously have inspirations in the real world, and some of them are going to be kind of easier to tell who their inspirations were than others, because, you know, kind of going similarly off what you were talking about before with what your fantasy booking with your friends and whatnot. You know, one of the things I did when I was a teenager is the e-feds, you know, where you made a wrestler and then you cut promos and then, you know, one of your friends booked matches and determined who won and whatnot. And some of the characters in Book It in my game, their names and their likenesses kind of came off of some of those EFED guys as well. So there's a little bit of kind of everything. And like I've said to you know, people who have gone like, oh, who's this person? I would be shocked if anybody got everyone. Everyone in there did have originally a real world counterpart that they were based off of, but some are going to be very, very easy to guess. Some, you know, we did a lot in terms of altering the artwork and the look of them. Some we did very little because I kind of wanted to make an homage to those people, specifically, you know, people like Joshi Queen, who is inspired by Manami Toyota, who I consider probably the greatest wrestler of all time. So I wanted to kind of make that more of just kind of a direct tribute to her. So we've done kind of a wide variety of things, but I've been very pleased at the reactions of people. And actually, I got to show one of the people in the game, Marty the Moth Martinez, who works on Lucha Underground. He did a spot for us at Truly Independent Wrestling, and I got to show him his card that was based off of him, and he thought it was awesome and really enjoyed it and wanted a copy of it. So that was really fun to see too, is the actual wrestler that it was based off of got to see the card and kind of give his stamp of approval. So that's just kind of a little bit of what to expect there. And then in addition to that, we have cards that are kind of based around things that have happened in the real world. Like you can play a card on your opponent that'll make one of his wrestlers miss their flight so they can't make the show, or they'll.
I love that. Are you going to get any? Yeah, you got a card there for. They have sexual harassment charges against them or something.
Not
DUIs.
yet.
We're going to start doing that.
There is one called Held Up. Where after you put the guy on the show, if you don't pay his cost again, he leaves.
Oh my God! Yes.
So we've done things like that. There's one in there called a 45-minute promo, where one of the wrestlers cuts a promo that's so long you have to remove one of the matches off of your show. So we've kind of based a lot of those things off of stuff that kind of happens in the real world, or off of Tall Tales and things like that. So we really had a lot of fun designing it, and.
Hey man, I hate to do this, Paul. Let's take
go
a
ahead.
quick. I'm going to take my commercial break, and we're going to come back, and I want you to talk more and more and more about the game. So.
Okay.
CamSoda.com is today's digital strip club. CamSoda has thousands of amateur girls next door and all the hottest porn stars of today, including Danny Daniels, Toy Black, and Brandy Love. 24/7 access to shows from your computer, mobile device, and tablet. No subscriptions or rebilling. Get free tokens with a free trial. Totally free. Try it. Really? Go now to camsoda.com/podcast. CAMSODA.com/podcast.
Hey, we're back with Paul. Hey, Paul, can you hear me and everything? I got new software here for the last 6 weeks, and I still make sure everything is working correctly.
Sound good, Brian.
All right, good deal. Back from the commercial, and what I want to do is, okay, a few questions I had about that. I looked at Twitch, and we'll tell everyone how to get to everything. I looked at Twitch a little bit, and also I'm excited about it. I'm going to be one of those guys that buys a copy of this. But a few questions. What is your recommendation? What's going to be your recommendation of how many people it's best to play with?
So the game is designed to be played between 1 to 4 players. So you can play it solo because it is based off of a point system. It's kind of the most reputation, the biggest reputation you have at the end of the game. That's the person who wins. So you can just kind of set a high score for yourself by solo. And really, the game kind of changes depending on the amount of players you have, just for the simple fact of if it's 2 players, it's a lot more head-to-head. You see less wrestlers, so you have to kind of plan around that. We have a lot of fun with it at the maximum of 4, just because then there's a lot of interaction among the players, which is something we really encourage. We encourage tactics of if one guy is getting too far ahead, that you try and do stuff to undercut him and steal his wrestlers away and try and undermine what he's trying to do. So I personally like playing it the most at that cap of 4 players, but it was really designed to try and be a solid, fun game for all of those ranges, and it's been pretty heavily tested at each of those player counts. So 1 to 4 players, and then the game itself takes about, depending on the number of players, roughly 60 to 90 minutes to play a full 6-turn version of the game.
Well, that's kind of pretty normal when you come. And the thing about it is, I mean, we've had the popularity of games like Magic, and other card games that I still see at the local comic book store. They still have either, Magic is the main one. They're still having tournaments there for that. And they offer like you're going to put the main characters out and everything, but somewhere down the line, I know this is probably your idea to do, but you're then going to have special packs and such that you can buy to have new wrestlers, right?
Sure, absolutely. Really, the way that that's probably going to go is in the form of expansions. So it's probably not just going to be specific wrestler packs. We want to give people a little something extra. We have kind of 3 that are in mind right now. We haven't really even started designing or testing them. But we want to incorporate tag teams into the game. So you can either have specific single cards that are a tag team, or you can take 2 singles wrestlers and then combine them together and get the best of their traits. And then you can have tag team matches, because as of right now, the game, you can only book 1 versus 1 singles matches in the game. So we want to add that in at some point. So then that'll allow us to add more wrestlers in. And then we also want to look into potentially adding title belts into the game. So the belts will give the person that's holding them certain increases to their star power or to how good of a wrestler they're seen as. And then the third one we had in mind, which was actually taking the singular game, which normally runs about 6 turns, and then spreading it over into almost like a campaign style where you're playing like 4 or 5 games, and then all of those games kind of stack on top of each other, and then it can be kind of a persistent thing where people are playing. But yeah, we absolutely have a lot of idea for expansions. I didn't want to do too much with this initial game. I just wanted to make sure that it was a solid, mechanically well done game, and then I figured we could add bits and pieces to it as we went along. So that's left us with a lot of room, not just to mention just the idea of wrestlers that we can put in there, because I've had so many people be like, hey, how come you didn't put somebody representing this person in there or this person? And it was literally just the first 60 people that came into my head. And there's definitely others that are going to go in there, but we probably will try and add something beyond just the wrestlers to every single thing that we release.
Awesome. And is it just like a typical card game in the sense that you're dealt certain players and it's all about, it's pretty much the power of your deck? Is that what we're doing here?
Well, not exactly. It's a little bit similar to, if anybody out there's ever played like a deck building game where you start off with a very kind of small, weak roster is what we call it, where you just start off with 6 jobbers in there, which are just guys who are basically just there to fill space. And then what happens is that each turn there is a marketplace that gets laid out. So it's like, okay, you have these 10 wrestlers to choose from, and then as you buy wrestlers, they get replaced, and there's always a marketplace of 10 wrestlers to build. So you pick and choose what wrestlers you want on your show. Then once that phase is over with, then you actually would shuffle up a deck. It's usually a fairly small deck or so. It's no more than 10, 15 cards at any given time. Then you would draw a hand, and then based on what you have in your hand, that's how you would start to choose the matches that you're going to have on your show. And then once you've gone through and done that, the wrestlers that appear on your show go back to that general marketplace at the end of the turn. So your deck is always kind of evolving and changing, because I wanted to make it very thematic. If you're running an independent promotion, just because you have a guy for one appearance doesn't mean you're going to have him forever. So you have to kind of re-sign new people each time, but you do have a few local people that are kind of considered your guys that you can also develop as well. So you have to decide, well, do I want to spend a lot of money on signing big names? Do I want to invest in my own talent? Do I want to try and spend some money to sabotage my opponents or help boost myself up? So there's a lot of decisions that you have to make, and the nice thing about it is that, again, this isn't like a game like Magic or like Raw Deal was, where you're building a deck and coming into it with it. Everybody starts at 0 essentially, and you're trying to build things up as the game progresses. So you don't have to worry about things like somebody spending a lot of money in the real world and then coming in and then just blowing you out.
Right, and I've seen, that's the thing about, I think, with Magic and some of the other, I guess Pokemon is the sense that they spend money, and then you have one guy that, or one guy that wins all the tournaments. You see his name many times at the comic book store. Or what happens is that, you have 4 or 5 or 6 guys that all have the best deck, and they just, they're the 6 top guys, and that's the only guys that are there to play against each other. And I know I have my co-host, Lance. I have to get a shout-out here. He's going to think these two guys are the biggest nerds, me and you talking. But this is one of those things that it's different. I love the idea, and it's also something that hardcore wrestling fans if you get it out there to enough people and make it like it sounds like you actually described how to play it very easily, more people, you've got such a huge market, and most of us are those hardcore people that are the biggest wrestling nerds ever. So what I want you to do, we've only got about 5 minutes left. It went by really quick, but I want you to tell everyone what's going on with this game. Number one, how to follow you on Twitter, Facebook, how we're going to be able to buy a copy of this game, and I promise you when it comes out, I'll actually try to remind everyone also. But just promote the hell out of it.
Sure. So again, the game is called Book It, the Wrestling Promoter card game. It is currently getting ready to be kickstarted. We're going to do a Kickstarter launch for it, so it's going to be a crowdfunded project. You can follow us on Twitter at Book It Game, all one word, Book It Game. And then if you go to Facebook, it's just facebook.com/Book It Game as well. If you happen to be somebody out there who has a Tabletop Simulator for the PC through Steam, you can actually play the game right now for free. You can go there, you can subscribe to it on the workshop. It's the full game, knock yourself out, have a blast with it. As far as the details for the campaign itself, again, we are starting the campaign on WrestleMania weekend. So the first day that the campaign is going to be active is going to be April 6th. That is when it's going to go live. It will run through May, so you'll have April through May to have the opportunity to back it. And like every Kickstarter campaign, we're going to offer a few different levels. We're going to have special versions of the game. We're going to have, if you want to be a premium level, like a very high-level backer, you can get a card made in your own likeness, so you can get yourself made into a wrestler, and we'll make a card for you and then send that to you. If you feel like spending $1,500, I'll hand-deliver the game to you, and you can put me through a table.
You'll bring it all the way to St. Louis, Missouri, if I want to spend
that is $1,500. Continental United States, I'll hand deliver it to you, and you can put me through a table. That's the goal for that. So it's going to be launching that weekend, and then also we are going to be at WrestleCon in New Orleans to commemorate it and to again kind of generate some buzz for the game. We're going to be running demos of the game throughout the whole convention, probably do 2 to 3 a day, and then you can obviously just kind of look through the game if you're at the table. We'll have exclusive promotional cards for the people who attend WrestleCon, and if you buy the game or back the game there, then you'll be able to get those cards. So we're really excited about that. We have a lot of work to do between now and then. And that's really how you can get it. Again, if you just want to kind of stay up to date on the info, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook. And then April 6th is the date we're going to be looking for that Kickstarter.
Sounds good, man. That's what we'll make sure, like I said, when WrestleMania weekend, I'll try to put that in my intro just to remind everyone. And I do plan to go ahead and sponsor you guys. I'm not going to do the 1,500, but no. I sat and listened to one guy on a podcast one time said, well, we don't want to get outrageous. We don't want people to spend more money on, to sponsor the podcast. And I thought to myself, well, what the hell? I want people to spend if someone wants me to come to their house, I like the way you did that, $1,500. Yeah. So go ahead, man.
Yeah, I've already had one person try to start a pool to raise money to get the highest level. I don't know if he really likes me or really hates me. It's one or the other. But I figured we'd have a lot of fun with the rewards. And then even like if you're somebody who either isn't interested in the game, but you just want to kind of support what we're doing, for $1, I will record a video thanking everybody who donates $1 in the voice of the wrestler of their choosing. So in varying levels of impersonations. So we're really trying to have a lot of fun with it. And I really can't wait to launch it. I think that I think that it's going to be something that wrestling fans are definitely going to enjoy. This game, if you're a hardcore fan, you're going to get a lot of inside jokes. But we also made it for people who, even if you're not super into wrestling, we did just try and make a good game. So we've play tested it with people who are independent wrestlers, all the way down to people who have never watched wrestling before in their life, and everybody has at least enjoyed the game itself. So again, obviously, if you're watching this, you're probably a diehard wrestling fan, but you're going to get something out of this. Even if you're just somebody who enjoys board games, we tried to make a good game for you too.
Awesome, because you can always get 3 people, but it's hard to get 4.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. I want to thank our guest, Paul LaPorte. I do thank you, sir, for joining us. Thank you, the listeners, everyone that downloads. Our sponsor, camsoda.com/podcast. Join us next week. Same bat time, same bat channel for the best little wrestling podcast in the business. Be there. Love my mama. All right, Paul. Thanks a lot, man.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Man, I think it went really well. It went real quick.